Today we discovered why even predators trust humans with their cubs. It was an ordinary morning, the sun barely peeking through the dense trees, casting soft rays across the quiet forest floor. For years, wildlife researchers have been following the movement of various animals, observing their behaviors, and recording their interactions with the environment. Yet, today was going to be different. It was the day they uncovered something extraordinary about the relationship between predators and humans. Dr. Evelyn Harris had dedicated her life to studying animal behavior. She was known for her calm demeanor and patient approach to research. For months, she had been monitoring a family of wild, predatorous wolves. This particular pack had been known for their unusual interactions with humans in the past. While most wild animals shy away from human presence, these wolves had begun to show signs of trust. It started with subtle changes. The pack would not retreat when humans approached their territory. Instead, they would watch from a distance, their yellow eyes curious but not threatening. As weeks went by, these predators began to show an unusual behavior. They would leave their cubs in the presence of the researchers, sometimes even nudging them closer to the humans. Dr. Harris was stunned. It was almost as if the wolves were asking for help, entrusting their young to the care of these strangers. After months of observation, she realized that these were not mere coincidences. There was a pattern. Every time the researchers arrived, the wolves would either bring their cubs closer or leave them in a safe, visible spot, clearly trusting that the humans wouldn't harm them. The breakthrough came one crisp autumn morning when Dr. Harris and her team arrived at the usual observation site. A wolf mother, whom they had named Koala, was there with her cubs. She stood at the edge of a clearing, watching them play. After a few moments, Koala made eye contact with Dr. Harris, then, without hesitation, nudged one of her cubs toward her. Dr. Harris crouched down slowly, the cub warily eyeing her but not running away. The trust was palpable. After several minutes, the cub made its way over to Dr. Harris, and the mother wolf gave a single, approving nod before quietly retreating into the forest. It was a silent gesture, but one that spoke volumes. Over the next few days, Dr. Harris and her team had the opportunity to study this unique bond between the predators and humans. The cubs, though still shy, seemed to understand that they were safe in the presence of the researchers. The predators, intelligent and intuitive, had come to recognize that humans at least, these humans are not a threat. In return, the researchers ensured the cubs were never harmed, even going so far as to clear paths for them to explore and providing ample distance from potential dangers. Through this extraordinary relationship, Dr. Harris discovered a new understanding of the complex emotions of predatory animals. It wasn't just a matter of trust, it was a matter of mutual respect. The wolves had learned over time that these humans were not like the others they had encountered, aggressive and fearful. These humans offered something different: patience, protection, and a quiet understanding of their world. For the researchers, the experience was humbling. They realized that, like any predator, humans had once ruled the land, driven by instinct and survival. But over time, through care, observation, and empathy, they had built a connection with the wilderness only that had bridged the gap between predator and prey, animal and human. By the end of the season, the wolves were no longer just distant creatures in the woods. They were allies, and the cubs, once fearful and uncertain, had grown into confident young wolves who approached humans with trust rather than caution. That was the day Dr. Harris and her team discovered why even predators trust humans with their cubs. It was because trust, built over time, could transcend the barriers of fear and instinct. It was a reminder that kindness and understanding could bridge the divide between the wild and the tame, and that in the eyes of these predators, humans were no longer just an unpredictable force, but guardians of their future. As the weeks turned into months, the discovery made by Dr. Harris and her team began to gain attention from the wider scientific community. What had started as an unusual phenomenon in a quiet forest was now becoming the focus of researchers and conservationists from around the world. Dr. Harris was invited to speak at conferences, sharing her findings about how these predators once feared and misunderstood had come to trust humans. The implications of her discovery stretched far beyond her study of wolves. It held the potential to change how people viewed and interacted with all kinds of wild animals. However, As the interest in the wolves grew, so did the questions about whether this newfound trust could be replicated in other species of predators. Could other wild creatures, like big cats, bears, or even apex predators such as lions and tigers, also develop similar relationships with humans? One day, a colleague of Dr. Harris's, Dr. Adrian Cole, came to her with a suggestion. Dr. Cole had spent years studying big cats in Africa, particularly lions, and had witnessed strange interactions between lions and local humans in rural communities. Lions, much like wolves, were apex predators, but unlike wolves, they had a reputation for being fiercely territorial and incredibly dangerous. Yet, in certain areas, these lions had shown unusual levels of trust toward people, often coming close to villages without displaying aggression. Intrigued by the potential for further exploration, Dr. Harris agreed to travel with Dr. Cole to Africa to observe these behaviors firsthand. Their mission was clear. They wanted to understand whether the same principles that had fostered trust between wolves and humans could be applied to big cats, specifically lions. Arriving in a remote village on the edge of the savannah, the researchers met with local wildlife monitors who had been observing the lions for years. The villagers had long lived in harmony with the lions, understanding their behaviors and knowing when to give them space. Dr. Harris was astonished to see lions moving in and out of the village boundaries as if they had no fear of the humans who lived there. After several weeks of observation, Dr. Harris noted a pattern eerily similar to that of the wolves. The lions would sometimes approach the villagers, even allowing them to pass by without raising an alarm. In one instance, a lioness approached a group of children playing near the edge of the village and lay down in the shade, watching them curiously. She made no move to attack, only observing, as if ensuring the safety of the cubs who played nearby. This was something different from the typical tame animal behavior. The lions weren't domesticated, nor were they completely indifferent to humans. It was as though they had come to recognize that the humans in this village were not their enemies, but part of a larger ecosystem of trust and balance. The turning point came when one lioness, whom the villagers had named Nyara, appeared with her young cubs on the outskirts of the village. Nyara, like Karala, seemed to communicate a quiet understanding. Her cubs were no longer in immediate danger, and in exchange for protection and respect, the lions would allow the villagers to observe and document their cubs. The cubs, much like those of the wolves, were curious but not afraid. They would approach the humans cautiously, but with no sign of aggression. What had once seemed like an anomaly in the forest was now being replicated in the vast African savanna. The connection between predator and human had deepened into something beyond the transactional. It was as if both species had reached an understanding that survival did not solely depend on fear and dominance. There was room for empathy, coexistence, and even trust. Dr. Harris and Dr. Cole worked together to document the interactions, carefully noting how these predators had come to rely on the presence of humans not as a threat but as a safeguard for their future. They were not domesticated or even tamed, but they had learned over time to assess whether humans could be trusted, and the answer, more often than not, was yes. Back at the research facility, Dr. Harris began drafting a groundbreaking paper on the subject. Her findings, combined with those of Dr. Cole and other wildlife conservationists, challenged the traditional understanding of predator behavior. It wasn't that predators had stopped being wild. Rather, they had simply learned that not all humans were a threat, and through patience, care, and mutual respect, humans had earned their place in the ecosystem no longer as intruders, but as protectors, part of a delicate balance. As the study spread throughout the academic world, conservationists started to look at human-animal relationships in a new light. Protecting endangered species no longer meant keeping humans at a distance, but finding ways to build trust, promote understanding, and protect these species in the wild, where they truly belonged. In the end, it wasn't just the wolves and lions that benefited from this new approach. The true revelation lay in the recognition that even the most feared predators that we had once thought of as untamable and dangerous had the capacity for trust. It was a trust built not in the absence of danger, but in the presence of respect. And with this understanding, a new era of wildlife conservation was born, only that saw humans and animals not as opposites, but as cohabitants of a shared world, bound together by the fragile thread of trust. a global shift from fear to understanding. As Dr. Harris and her team's research continued to make waves, the story of the wolves and lions spread far beyond academic circles. Conservation groups, wildlife foundations, and even governments began to take notice. The idea that predators aren't feared for their strength and ferocity could trust humans became a powerful message of hope for the future of endangered species. It was an opportunity to rethink the way humans interacted with the natural world, especially those animals that had long been on the verge of extinction due to human conflict. One of the first to implement these new ideas was a global wildlife conservation organization called EarthGuard. They have been working on projects to protect large predators in Africa, Asia, and North America for decades. In light of the new research, they shifted their approach to focus on creating environments where human-wildlife conflict could be minimized not by removing human presence, but by fostering a relationship built on trust and mutual respect. The first major pilot program was launched in the savannas of Africa, near the village where Dr. Harris and Dr. Cole had witnessed the unusual trust between the lions and humans. EarthGuard set up a series of conservation camps, not to act as distant observers, but as active participants in the environment. They worked alongside local communities to establish guidelines for how humans and animals could share the land. Farmers and villagers were trained in non-invasive ways to protect their livestock from lions and other predators. The goal wasn't to push the animals away, but to coexist without fear of conflict. It was an unprecedented experiment, one that required patience, communication, and careful monitoring. The results were slowly becoming evident. Lions, once considered a threat to livestock, began to retreat when they sensed humans working in harmony with the environment. In return, farmers learned not to retaliate against lions, understanding that killing them could have devastating consequences for the local ecosystem. At the same time, researchers began to apply this approach to other apex predators: tigers in India, grizzly bears in North America, and even jaguars in the Amazon. The methodology was the same: create an environment where animals were free to roam without fear of human aggression, and humans were educated to understand the importance of these creatures in maintaining ecological balance. Dr. Harris, who had become a leader in this new movement, was often invited to give talks at international conferences, where she discussed her experiences with the wolves and the lions. Her message was clear: understanding, patience, and respect were the keys to a future where humans and predators could coexist, not just for the survival of the animals, but for the survival of humanity itself. Predators, she often said, are not enemies to be defeated, but teachers. They show us what it means to live in balance with nature. We must learn from them, not fear them. Meanwhile, the impact of her research was beginning to take shape in the realm of wildlife documentaries. Filmmakers, inspired by the findings, sought to capture the new reality of predator-human relationships. A new wave of documentaries emerged, showcasing the bond between humans and wild. Predators showed these relationships were no longer about dominance or survival, but about understanding and protection. These documentaries went viral, reaching millions and sparking global conversations about how humans could play a crucial role in the preservation of the wild. But it wasn't just about theory. On the ground, the change was happening. In the forests of North America, local wildlife rangers were trained to work alongside wolves, allowing them to thrive without the constant threat of human intervention. In Asia, researchers worked to protect tigers in their natural habitats, building partnerships with rural villages to avoid conflict. Back at the research facility, Dr. Harris and Dr. Cole were already planning the next phase of their study. They were preparing for an ambitious project in the Canadian Rockies, where grizzly bears roamed the vast wilderness. Could these formidable creatures, known for their size and aggression, also develop a trust in humans? The answer, they knew, would depend on the willingness of both humans and animals to redefine the boundaries of fear. As the years passed, the ripple effect of their discovery continued to spread. Cities and national parks began to implement wildlife corridors, safe pathways, allowed predators to move between habitats without fear of human encroachment. Governments passed new laws to protect these corridors, recognizing that the future of biodiversity depended on ensuring the survival of both predators and prey. And then, one day, Dr. Harris received a letter from a wildlife sanctuary in South America. They had been working with jaguars, and after months of careful study, the jaguars had shown signs of trust toward the humans who cared for them. The same principles that had worked with wolves, lions, and tigers were now being applied to these elusive creatures of the jungle. The message in the letter was simple: we've discovered that even jaguars trust humans with their cubs. It was a moment of profound realization. The work of Dr. Harris and her team had done more than change how humans saw predators. It had changed how the world saw itself. In teaching the world to trust predators, they had also learned to trust each other. They had learned that fear could be replaced with understanding, and that the future of both humans and animals rested not in conquering the wild, but in sharing it. As Dr. Harris looked out at the setting sun, reflecting on how far they had come, she knew one thing for certain: the world had not just discovered why predators trust humans with their cubs, it had discovered the power of trust itself, kind of trust that can heal the world, one species at a time. A legacy of trust, the future of coexistence. As the years went on, the world continued to change. Dr. Harris, now a leading figure in wildlife conservation, had seen firsthand the shift in how both humans and animals were interacting with each other. She had witnessed a world, once divided by fear and misunderstanding, evolve into one where humans and predators could live in harmony. But while progress was being made, she knew the true challenge lay in sustaining this newfound equilibrium. The next chapter of Dr. Harris's journey began when she was asked to help create a new conservation program aimed at restoring balance to ecosystems in danger of collapse. This program would be unlike any other. Its focus was not just on protecting endangered species, but on rebuilding relationships between humans and the wildlife they had once driven to the brink of extinction. Dr. Harris's vision was simple: to create a global network of conservation sanctuaries where humans and predators could coexist without conflict. These sanctuaries would serve as safe havens for apex predators and other endangered species, and they would also function as educational hubs for communities to learn about the importance of these creatures. The goal was not to keep predators in isolation, but to allow them to roam freely within their natural habitats, with humans acting as their caretakers and protectors. The first sanctuary of its kind was established in the heart of Africa, near the Serengeti, a vast and iconic ecosystem that was home to both predators and prey. Here, lions, leopards, and cheetahs roamed the plains, and humans, who had once been seen as a threat, were now seen as partners in conservation. Local communities worked alongside wildlife rangers to monitor the animals, ensuring that they could live without fear of poachers or human encroachment. What made this sanctuary unique was its focus on education. Visitors from around the world traveled to witness the successful coexistence between humans and apex predators. They saw lions lounging in the sun, resting in the shadows of the acacia trees, while humans, children, families, and wildlife enthusiasts watched from a distance, marveling at the animals' beauty. The villagers, once skeptical of the program, now took pride in their role as stewards of the land, teaching their children to respect the predators that shared their world. In addition to creating sanctuaries, Dr. Harris worked with international governments to pass laws that supported these conservation efforts. Through careful research, advocacy, and collaboration with scientists and wildlife experts, new policies were enacted to protect wildlife corridors and promote coexistence. Governments began to offer financial incentives to communities that embraced non-lethal methods of protecting livestock from predators. These measures were designed not only to protect the animals, but also to help communities thrive without fear of retaliation. But the true impact of the program came when Dr. Harris received an unexpected invitation to visit a remote village in the Himalayas. The villagers had been living alongside snow leopards for centuries, and their relationship with these elusive predators had always been one of wariness and respect. Over the years, however, poaching had become a significant threat to the snow leopard population, and the villagers had struggled to protect both their livestock and the animals. When Dr. Harris arrived, she was welcomed by the village elders, who shared their concerns about the future of the snow leopards. The elders spoke of the old ways, of how their ancestors had lived in harmony with the land, but also of how the encroachment of modern society had created conflict. They believed that the knowledge passed down from generation to generation could help restore balance, but they didn't know where to begin. Dr. Harris worked closely with the elders, introducing them to the principles of predator conservation that had been so successful in Africa. She suggested that they form a partnership with neighboring villages and set up a conservation zone where the snow leopards could roam freely, without fear of being hunted. In exchange, the villagers would receive support in managing their livestock through non-lethal deterrents, like electric fences and guardian dogs, which had proven effective in other regions. It wasn't an easy sell. The villagers were cautious, and it took time for them to trust the idea, but slowly, as they saw the tangible benefits of peaceful coexistence, fewer attacks on livestock, and a healthier snow leopard population, attitude began to shift. Over the next few years, snow leopard sightings became more common, and the villagers began to see the predators not as threats, but as partners in the fragile balance of their ecosystem. The success in the Himalayas marked a turning point. Dr. Harris's vision had spread to remote corners of the world, where humans and animals lived side by side, learning to trust each other and share the land. What had started as an experiment in the African savanna had become a global movement that proved that the future of conservation didn't lie in fear and separation, but in collaboration and respect. As Dr. Harris reflected on the years of progress, she realized that the legacy of her work wasn't just about saving individual species. It was about changing the way people saw the natural world, from one of domination to one of partnership. The predators, once the most feared creatures on Earth, had become symbols of hope, teaching humanity that through trust, understanding, and compassion, we could build a future where all species, human and animal alike, could thrive. In the end, Dr. Harris's greatest achievement wasn't just saving wolves, lions, or snow leopards. It was proving that even the most feared predators could trust humans with their cubs, and that, in turn, humans could learn to trust themselves in the process. The world had entered a new era, where coexistence was no longer a dream, but a reality, and the legacy of that trust would echo through generations to come. I prefer this response. ChatGPT, response to a new era, the unseen connection.